can't buy. It resides between my eyes. Walked through the fire, came out better on the other side. See, life's like a beach if you find the sand. And right now, I feel like 100 grand.
You are listening to Inspired Insider with your host, Dr. Jeremy Wise.
Dr. Jeremy Wise here, founder of InspiredInsider.com, where I talk with inspirational entrepreneurs and leaders like the founders of P90X, Baby Einstein, Atari, many more, how they overcome big challenges in life and business. Our sponsor today is Rise25.com, which helps service professionals, doctors, lawyers, accountants, coaches, create additional revenue streams and stop just trading time for dollars. Go to Rise25.com, learn more. It's run by myself, co-founder John Corcoran. It is application only. Today, I'm very excited. We have Michael Tyrrell, founder of Wholetones. Wholetones differentiates itself from traditional music therapy with its unique use of specific frequencies other than 440 Hertz, which I'm going to have Michael explain further. Michael is a musician, composer, producer. He's even won a Grammy Award for his work with Mylon LeFevre. How do you pronounce it?
You got it.
LeFevre. He's author of the book Wholetones, The Sound of Healing. Michael, I'm excited to have you. Thank you for joining me.
It's an honor, Jeremy. I've been looking forward to it.
So I want to start off with just talking about the differences between traditional and your CDs. You have 7 Wholetones CDs, right?
Well, we have substantially more product now, but yes, the original one is a 7 CD set, correct?
Yeah, so what's the difference between traditional, for people who don't know what frequency, Wholetones?
Sure. Yeah, no problem. The best way to explain it would be we're used to hearing music in a particular frequency range in the United States of America, more or less. You know, there's always people that take liberty with tuning here and there, but by and large, if you go to a music store, you'll get a tuner and it will be calibrated to the note A equals 440 Hertz. As a child, I always knew there was something wrong with music. Obviously, a whole lot right with it, or I wouldn't have put my whole life into it. But right. I always knew that someday I'd figure out what it was that was bothering me. And at the end of the day, I realized after 20 years of research that the tuning center of A equals 440 Hertz was negative to how we're created, especially when it comes to our electricity, circadian rhythm, how we sleep, how we wake. And through a very clandestine meeting in Israel, which I'm sure we'll get to at some point.
This was a Jewish Orthodox coffeehouse. Yeah. And I ran into a guy. That's the most random thing when I read that. I'm like, okay.
But you know, some of the greatest things in the world, at least in my life, I mean, I'm kind of an X-Files guy, but I've always run into amazing things. Even right. Joe Barton, the publisher, my publisher, we just ran into each other. But literally, I want to make sure I answer your question first before we go to Israel. But I just realized after a lot of research that music in its own right, you know, the old maxim that music soothes the savage beast. I realized that was possible, but there's also attachments, i.e. in other countries, they don't use the tuning that we use. And most people would not know that. You wouldn't realize that if you took your tuner and put it in your suitcase and went to South America and wanted to tune up and play with the band, it would be impossible because they tune to a different frequency than we do. And that happens all over the world. So my pursuit was finding out what frequency would adhere to the body and on a cellular level actually bring some sort of stability, if you will, to the human body, as opposed to something that's always fighting against how we're designed electronically. So that was the impetus behind Wholetones was, like I said, a clandestine meeting that kind of turned the lights on, and then I realized how deep the rabbit hole was and spent, between 18 and 20 years researching it before I ever even recorded.
So let's talk about one of the examples and how you came to one of these, because I see on the site there's like a 396 Hertz,
yes.
417, 444. Which one can we talk about and explain like how you came to that specific frequency?
Well, we can. And 396 Hertz, which for your listeners, it's really simple. Like it sounds 10 years from now, it's going to be like table talk. But now it sounds like so heady. It's not heady. 396 Hertz, or Hertz in itself is just named after Dr. Hertz that invented that measurement of basically what we're looking at is vibrations per second.
Right.
So 396 hertz is just that. A given instrument string, whatever, vibrates 396 times per second.
Right.
So that is what we call on my project the open door, and for good reason. When you work with vibratory stimulus or you work with frequency on the human body, a lot of times, because we're all plus minus, there's commonalities. A lot of people are insecure, they're ashamed, they deal with bitterness, or they deal with stuff, and they don't really feel worthy to receive healing in the first place. I know it sounds crazy, but one of the components of 396 hertz is it causes the body to relax long enough to get into a state of realizing, wow, I can get better from this. It opens the person up to receive more. So if we were using like a laser probe or some other type of device to introduce that frequency, the same frequency to the body, they would call it the opening frequency instead of the open door, which I've named mine, because what it will do is that frequency will open the human body up enough to receive the other impulses that are coming later on. And that's kind of why 396 is the open door, is because I always recommend, no matter what people do, always make sure you include that in your daily regime. Listen to that one first.
How did you figure out there was 396? I'm curious. Like,
okay,
as opposed to, because there's a different, it's very precise, right?
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, think about it in this term, a couple things to demystify it, and then I'll answer the question, hopefully, in the way that it will help. We have to demystify something off the bat for your listeners. Frequency in itself is everything. This conversation, the modality that we are connected right now by computer via Skype, the microphone in front of your face, the words we're exchanging, what we're hearing, how it's broken down. Everything's a frequency. Everything has a resonant frequency. And so you would say, oh, that still sounds heady, until I said, well, hey, Jer, what if I would have met you 45 years ago and I came over to your house with a big aluminum rectangular box and I said, don't worry, I'm not going to trash your kitchen, but I'm going to cut a rectangular hole in the sheetrock and I'm going to put my box in it. And when I'm done, no matter what you want to do, tea, coffee, food, you can heat it up in there and you can take it out with your bare hands and it won't be hot to the touch, but it'll be piping hot. You go, that guy's out of his mind. Well, all those are specific frequencies that cause what? Water molecules to get excited. Molecules in food to get excited, and then they get excited, and then they start rubbing on each other, and friction starts, heat starts, and energy is dispersed through it. It's not simple. Your favorite radio station growing up in a kid, mine was 96 Rock. And so as long as that dial was on 96 Rock, I got Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers coming at me. But the moment that analog dial gets off just a little bit, well, what do we have? No more signal, we have noise. Same way with frequencies. The reason they're specific is because they're centered upon certain parts of the human body. Right. Certain parts of your body will resonate. Everybody's body will resonate. If I say right now, I love you, and it's real, then all your listeners just felt what I just said. In the same way, if you said, I hate you, and you meant what you said, they would feel that in a different way, in a negative way. Right. So to try to answer your question as easily and to demystify all this instead of frou-frou as being great science, 396, if you'll notice, if you look across at all of the frequencies, all of them are mathematically connected. They're all solfegy tones, and solfegy, to demystify that, simply means to sight sing. And in the ancient solfegy style of King David, all the way up until late 540s, there was no polyphony or no chordal music. Everything was just melodic content. And fathers would teach their sons these particular frequencies or test tones, and they would, that's where the music would imbue. They would learn these songs, and then they would sing together in unison, later on becoming Gregorian chant, as we know, and blah, blah, blah. But these solfegy tones are ancient tones. It wasn't like, scientist Mike discovered these in a test tube. This was going on. I don't even really know how far back we could trace it. Early Egypt, early Israel, we know for sure. So these particular frequencies, when you take their harmonic mathematical components, it was pretty quick to derive certain other frequencies that were familiar or in the same family of that one. And once you do that, I had the blessing of being able to work with a physicist and some other people that are actually just friends of mine, Go figure. And there is actually specific resonant points of your organs, your lungs, your heart. And you say right away, or a critic would say, yeah, but my heart's not the same as your heart. You're absolutely right. My lungs are bigger than your lungs. You might be right. What about my liver? What about my gallbladder? Well, there's always a baseline for every organ, meaning if let's just throw out the terminology 741 Hertz and say that it affects, this part of your heart, let's say. Now, let's say your heart weighs, I don't know, 8 pounds. Mine weighs 7.4, whatever. So you go, all right, so an 8-pound heart must resonate at that frequency, but what about yours? It doesn't weigh that much. That's where oscillation comes in. What's oscillation? Simple. You ever listen to a singer and they just sing one note, or they sing, you hear the vibrato? When the vibrato comes in, it's an oscillation, and it sweeps that frequency over a larger band, and in essence touching a whole lot more of the same commonality, because it's sending that frequency through this instead of just this. So I'm giving you a little bit of quick science, but it really isn't that mystical. The point is 396 is a specific frequency, as is 417, 444, all the way through, 528, 639, 741, and 852. But if you break them all down, if you remember, Nikola Tesla's great. He said, if you could understand the mystery behind the 3, 6, and 9, you would understand how the universe was, the architecture of the universe. All of these are either 3, 6, or 9. If you break them down in the skein of Pythagoras, they all break down to that same. So they're all related, and all of them have a specific tone center that would cause a different part of your body to hopefully resonate.
Interesting.
Make sense?
Yeah. So, I mean, as much as it can make sense right now for me, but what I found interesting is I don't know if this was a mentor or a doctor, he showed you some water molecules.
Yes.
So tell me about what happened and what was going on at the time.
I'd be happy to. Well, interestingly enough, I was on a missions trip, and I came back and I had some kind of nasty liver fluke, and the doctors couldn't figure out what it was. So that, that's why some things happen and they're negative in your mind, and you think, what's this all about? But that drove me to this guy, which I can't mention his name. He's kind of a little bit under the radar.
That's okay.
Everybody would be on his doorstep. But anyway, I met his nurse at a health food store, and we were talking. She goes, well, you need to come. I think I call him Dr. Jake in the book. You need to come to, visit his office. Well, when I went to his office wasn't an office. It was a whole wing in a hospital. So when I went in there, the initial thing was, this guy I love people like this, because you could tell that he was kind of a recluse, but just brilliant guy who wasn't trying to blow his own horn or anything. It was a miracle I got in there. But when I looked in there, he had a giant Tesla coil with a chair in it. And I thought, that just doesn't even look safe. And so I went to talk to him about that, and he totally ignored my question. He wouldn't even talk. He wouldn't answer my question. So I thought, I guess he doesn't want to talk about that thing. And he goes, no, come here. I got something else I want to show you. So we had a dark field microscope that had a pickup, for your listeners, an element that brings a vibratory response from the human voice. It was on the bottom of the slide channel. So he said, I want you to do something for me. I said, okay. He said, I want you to look into the eyepiece of this. It was a dark field microscope, into this microscope. And when I put this water on the slide, I want you to tell the water how beautiful it is. I said, I'm not going to talk to water, because I wasn't at the place I'm at now. I didn't understand. I was ignorant. And he goes, all right, then you just keep watching and I'll talk to it for you. And so he put the drop. He said, my, what a lovely drop of water you are. And there's this perfect crystal. Beautiful. It looked like a snowflake. And I went, come on. So he took this
magic water.
Yeah, took the slide. That's what I was thinking. This is like some kind of dog and pony. And he flicks the water off, puts the slide back in. And he goes, keep watching. Does the same thing again. So he said, now as awesome as that is, watch this. So he puts it on, and he says, you're just beautiful. And he goes, you suck. The thing shattered like glass, like somebody threw a rock at it. And he's not saying anything, but in my heart, I'm hearing, the power of life and death is in the tongue. It just demonstrated it in real time, that how we speak and the vibratory, how our words vibrate and how the intention behind them, what we would call in science is amplitude, the power behind it. We can do amazing things or we can do horrible things with frequencies.
I remember, and I saw it a while ago, but there's a documentary sort of about this, What the Bleep. I don't know if you saw it.
Yes,
right? This is about the same concept, right?
To some degree, it is. Yeah, because, you know, people have a really hard time with quantum physics, you know, but the way I grew up, quantum physics seemed more normal to me than Newtonian physics, you know, but everybody's different. But to me, that made a whole lot more sense about how quarks relate to each person that would be looking at them versus this randomized, you know, oh, yeah, great, an apple fell off a fence post and hit the ground. Gee, Copernicus. I mean, that just didn't do anything for me. But the other one did, because it presupposes the fact that someone possesses either A, faith, or B, some electronic impulse that changes how that quark responds to the different humans when they would walk in. So that excites me. I mean, that whole type of, but yeah, I mean, I believe that over, you know, I'm 57 now, and I remember, you know, as a young guy, you know, you'd get a car that, you know, and you'd go, what a piece of junk. And you know what? You have the repair bills to prove it. It would be what you said that it was. And I started, you know, and I used to just snicker too. I mean, I look at stuff and I go, well, that's just silly. But then I just started speaking life into things. And same with my mailbox. I started calling it the money box instead of the bill box. I used to always, I ever get his bills. And I started calling it the money box, and I stopped getting so many bills, and things started changing and people started contacting me. And so I just realized there is intention with goodness. A lot of what happens, I mean, can you imagine what our world would be like if people just organically loved each other and didn't get into all of the, you know, the crap pseudoscience, politics, religious stuff, or they just love people because we're all trying to survive on the planet together? How awesome it would be.
We'll start with this interview, right?
Exactly.
Michael, so why did you land in Orthodox Jewish Coffeehouse?
Now, that's the great question. So my friend, and I can tell you his name, Dr. Finto, Dr. Don Finto, was my pastor for years at a church I attended in Nashville, Tennessee, Belmont Church. And he saw pretty early on my affinity for the things of I love not only the tradition, but I love Jewish people. I always have. I just feel like I'm one. And so he said, listen, I just wrote this book called Your People Shall Be My People, and I need you to proofread it for me. But he goes, my payment is I want to take you with me to Israel, and then you can do it over there. I was like, oh, come on. So yeah, I went with him. He was 71 at that time and could still beat me arm wrestling. Crazy driven guy. Just awesome guy. And so anyway, we're at Ben Gurion Airport, and I said, well, should we get like GPS or something? He goes, oh, heavens, no. He said, we're just going to fly by the seat of our pants and see where God takes us. And I thought, well, that's exciting because I don't have any sense of direction and I'm driving. So I'm driving this rental car with Don, and he said, I just have this sense we're supposed to go to Ben Yehuda Street in Jerusalem, and there's this old coffee house. And he said, one of my friends that lives in Tel Aviv doesn't know that we're here, but I feel like he's going to show up at 4:00, so we need to get over there. And I'm just looking at this guy like, I have never had an afternoon like this. I love this. This is Huck Finn, you know? So I did what he said. We drove to the coffee house, sat down. When I sat down, there was a guy in the corner playing piano. And as soon as we sat down, he looked over at me and he just started like staring at me. And it was like really unnerving, right?
That would freak me out a little bit, yeah.
It was like, take a picture, it lasts longer. It was just bizarre. And then he was like smirking and stuff. So I'm thinking, what is this guy? What's his gig, you know? And or maybe he thought I was Paisan because I had long hair, like way long hair. And yeah, another musician, you know, in this coffee house. So anyway, so we're sitting there, and at the end, the guy comes up and says, so are you guys Christians? It's like, well, yeah, since you asked the question, yeah. And he goes, I knew it. He goes, did you know what I was doing? And I said, no, what were you doing? He goes, you didn't recognize the songs? I said, well, I did recognize you were playing like, you know, typical worship songs that we would know in the States. He goes, yeah, but it's instrumental. He goes, this is an Orthodox coffee house. They'd kill me if they knew what I was doing, but they loved the music. So I really like this guy right off the bat. I said, what's your name? He goes, David. I said, okay. And he said, I got something for you. And he said, I want to give you my whole life's work. And that, in my life, I can remember a few statements that were made to me where it hit me inside like a ton of bricks. And when he said that, it was like this aloof conversation. It got real serious. He said, I want to give you my whole life's work. I've taken it as far as I can go. And he goes, but you got to wait for my next break. I got to get it out of the car. And I said, okay, so I'll wait. And he went back and started playing. And right around 4 o'clock, I see Don kind of look over to his left and stand up with his arms out, and he goes, there he is, right on time. So some guy named Reuben Duran that didn't know we were in Israel, that lives in Tel Aviv, shows up at 2 minutes to 4. Don said he'll be there around 4 o'clock. He had no idea, no way to contact him. And this guy's walking through the door, and I'm sitting here going, what the heck's going on? So they're hugging each other, and Don said, well, when you're done with talking to David, we'll go get some food with Reuben and talk for a while and check into the Christian Quarter and whatever. So David goes out to his car, comes back, and gives me 2 sets of manuscripts and told me that his whole wheelhouse was David's life and the Psalms, and that he'd interpreted the Psalms. And so there was typical tablature music that we'd all be familiar with to some degree, that has chord changes and whatnot on it, and some melody. And then there was it just, to be quite honest with you, it looks kind of like gibberish to me. I mean, it just looked like a bunch of intervals, like intervallic, like high, low, no, and there was a tone center, but it wasn't like any music I'd ever seen before. And I said, okay, cool. So I hugged him, put it in my bag, and that was it. Had a great night with Reuben, laughing about how he just decided to come to Jerusalem, not having any idea we were there, and going to the same coffee house and talking a little bit about this David guy. And so when I got back to the States, I played the tablature stuff. And remember, I would still be tuned to A equals 440. I didn't know anything yet. I wasn't at that place where it had become an aha thing. And I was like, man, that's nice, but that didn't butter my corn. And I just put everything into my file cabinet in the office and walked away and went back to life for 2 years. Didn't even think about it. And then one day, I don't know what was going on, Jared, but I had this feeling all of a sudden that I had misinterpreted the music. So I took the tablature out and I looked at it and I thought, nah, that's what it is. It is what it is. And then I looked at the other one and I went, hold on a second. This is more relative. And I started thinking about the tuning center. And then it was really funny because it's like one of those things where stuff happens and people either think, okay, he's one of those weirdos that listens to voices. I'm not. I can assure you that. But I had the sensation that I was supposed to open the Bible, just ad hoc, and I did. And I landed on page 222. And I said, if I read the bottom of this page and it talks about David, I'm going to lose my skin right now. And right at the bottom, it's like, and David, the son of Jacob. And I'm like, what? It can't be this easy. Just double it. Just double it. Really? And I'm talking to, there's no one there, but I'm talking to them. I said, wait a minute. So I double this, right? Because I know what 222 means. It means God's sufficiency in the midst of man's insufficiency. So I double this, and it gives me 444. Are you kidding me? So the tone center is A equals 444 hertz? That's going to make all the difference? Well, when see how I got this, which was your original question, sorry. When I got the A equals 444, that was my tuning center. Like instead of A440, it was A444. Now, when I broke that down, all of those other frequencies were right there. So I was like, oh, come on, man.
Because that's the key to David's CD, right? The 444.
That's correct.
So what is that supposed? We can't make health claims, but what is it supposed to help people do without making health claims?
Boy, that's not going to be easy. Well, for the sake of
what was the original idea behind creating that particular CD? That's because you said that's the kind of the foundation.
Yeah, that was the centerpiece. But what I'm saying is it's like 6 degrees from Kevin Bacon. Everything's related to that.
Mm-hmm.
So if you go the other direction,
So you started with that. That was like the center starting point.
That was only because I retuned my guitar when I saw that the other set of music. When I said I think I had greatly misinterpreted the music, I was absolutely correct. So when I tuned my guitar to this random tuning of 444 hertz, which was A now, it changes the whole tuning center up 4 cents. And hence my original statement is like somebody say, well, what could 4 cents do? Well, in this case, what will 4 cents on your radio dial do? It's that specific. So 4 cents was, even though it's still in the note A, it's 4 cents higher, and it changed the tuning center. So we're now, all the other notes, like G, for example, is now 396 hertz, which happened to align with the human body. So it was kind of like, again, I stumble into a lot. Most people Nikola Tesla, probably my number one fave, but everybody stumbles into this stuff. I've never met anyone who was really that intelligent where it was 100% intentional. You know, you kind of like just follow an impulse, and next thing you know, you end up with something. I didn't realize how powerful this was going to be until there was certain elements that were in my personal realm, like my mother and the deals, you know, her sickness, my dog, which was her fear of loud noises, thunder, lightning, fireworks. And one day I just happened to be playing the music in the living room, and we were having a hellacious storm, which Florida is notorious for in the summer. And she went, instead of freaking out and shaking, she went and curled up in her bed and went to sleep. And I thought, I didn't even do that. I was like, wow, that's not bugging her today. Then I realized that this 396, one thing I can say about that frequency is it has an uncanny, pretty much across the board ability to bring dogs in a place of complete composure. Faster than a thunder suit or anything else when there's bad thunder lightning, or if you have a dog that has like separation anxiety, and when you leave to go to work, the dog goes nuts, and then when you come home goes nuts. We just leave this on, and when we come home, you know, she's like, and when we get back home, because for whatever reason, that frequency helps dogs relax. So it's not just people, it's any living thing.
So Michael, how sensitive are you to other people? You know, like when sometimes you meet someone, you got to get a feel for them, because this is what you do for a living. I'm curious.
That's such a great question. I can say hypersensitive. I would say like even intentions. Like I remember something, I saw someone I won't tell you who it is. I saw somebody on television one time, and I looked over at my wife and I said, that's a very bad man. Well, later on he ended up being arrested and put in jail, and everybody would know who it is. I'm not going to tell you who he is, but so to the point where, like doing interviews, if I could climb through the screen and hug you right now, I would do that, because whatever it is about you, yes. But when you're around just a myriad of people all of the time, there's sometimes, like I mentioned in the book, resonant frequency. Okay. Have you ever heard somebody say, I feel you, dude, or I resonate with that, or what? Really, that's in essence what's happening. It's a limbic connection, and people don't really understand how all of that works, but it's as simple as the intuitive nature of the person knows when somebody is receiving love. The fastest, best explanation was the Beach Boys, Good Vibrations.
Right, yeah.
Remember?
Yeah.
Yeah. One's sending, the other one's receiving. He has excitations. She's digging what I'm dishing out, man. You know, good vibes, right? And so with that being said, to answer your question, hypersensitive to that, which also goes hand in hand with discernment and making good decisions and business decisions. Like my publisher, there's a million publishers, but there's only one Joe Barton. Joe's like one of my best friends in the whole world. And so if you find somebody like that, you can't fail. If you're on the same wavelength, you know. But most people, I got to be honest, most people I run into are altruistic and actually really good folk. There's just a few nefarious ones, and when I am around those people, I get away from them pretty quick. Not that I'm afraid that what they have is going to get on me. It's just I don't even want any of that. I'm not buying it. Yeah.
So how did you meet Joe? So because obviously you're the creative producer. You could probably pump out these these healing frequencies all day long. And then you have the other side of things, which is the marketing business side, which you've had to do all along too. But then you meet Joe. So how did you meet Joe?
Okay. Super funny story. Joe is, what an extraordinary man. That's all I can say. Great father. He's got a bunch of kids. So a church in Sioux Falls, South Dakota said, hey, we'd like to have you come do this weekend thing, and do some worship music and play some of your tunes and explain Wholetones, the whole idea behind it. And so Joe opened up his house to have the meeting, but Joe was out of town. I thought that was extraordinary. He doesn't know me at all and has no problem having, some itinerant minister guys show up at his house, stay at his house, and so he got in the second day of this 3-day thing. And he was sitting on the couch, and I liked him right away, but I started talking, and while I was talking, tears are coming down his eyes. I mean, just like a constant. And after he says, I've never heard anything like that in my entire life. And I said, wow. I said, I hope that's a positive thing. He goes, no, it's a life-altering thing. He said, I think we're going to be really good friends. And so
what were you saying?
Well, I was talking about a lot of what we're talking about as far as equating frequencies.
Got it.
Like a lot of times people don't understand in the terminology like we're speaking. They don't see words or thoughts as frequency. See, they don't, and rightly so. But it's like Neo when he finally saw through the Matrix. He saw everything the way it was, and that's kind of. I'm a weird dude, man, and it's kind of like did you see the movie Tomorrowland by any chance?
Mm-mm.
You should.
Who was in that?
George Clooney. It was a Disney film that was.
I love Disney films. I can't believe I haven't seen that one.
Oh God, it's so good that I can't even put it into words. I've already watched it like 30 times. But
it's on my list now. Thank you. Yeah.
You'll love it, and then we'll talk about it. But the girl that is kind of like the star of the thing. She makes a statement, and he says, but you don't have the street cred. You don't have the education. Who do you think you are? And she goes, I'm just somebody that knows how things work. And then it was like, bingo. I just know how everything works. I don't know how I know how everything works. But when I apply it to science, it holds water. And all my friends that are around me, thank the Lord, are extreme scientists. And so when I brought Wholetones out, I had quite a litany of people to hand it to, and what do you think? And it was like, you have no idea what you've done. I said, you're pretty much 20% correct. I really don't know what. And here's the funny part here. I'm still finding out every day. We have maybe 100,000 testimonials that, and I just sit there and I went, I never would have thought of that. Plants growing off the hook. A guy named Jordan Rubin. I don't know if you ever heard of Jordan Rubin. He's like the supplement guy.
Yeah. He started Garden of Life. Yeah.
Yes.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. He's a very good friend. He was the first guy to use, I have a product called Chroma, which is not only audio, but it's also the corresponding light frequencies as well. And it's on DVD and Blu-ray. And he was the first one. He got the prototypes to put in his hydroponic and his mycobacterium labs, his indoor growing fields. And it makes plants grow like crazy. So, you just sit there, and that's what I mean. I'm finding out every day more applications. I made it because I felt like it was, they asked Mel Gibson one time, they said, why did you make The Passion of the Christ? And he said, because I felt like it was the mandate of my life. And my wife, who is I married the right person 30 years ago this summer. And
congratulations.
Thank you, bro.
For her. No.
Yeah.
For you, I mean.
She's a saint.
Yeah.
But it's like, if you marry the right person, they don't buy your press. When you come back from a conference and people are freaking out and she goes, yeah, but don't forget to take out the trash. She keeps you grounded, right? Yeah. But when she told me, when she heard Wholetones, like when we were driving back from Dallas to Florida where I recorded, and she heard like the first 5 minutes I looked over at her, and she's not that emotional kind of component. She's more of an admin type. She's completely undone. I mean, just losing it. She looked at me and she said, this is your magnum opus. This is the reason you were created. And when she said that, there was a validity in my heart that I can't put into words. I can't say enough about or articulate how deeply that hit me when she said that. Because I mean, usually I'll write a song, go, isn't that the best song ever? She goes, it's not that good. But when she heard this, I said, what do you think? And she said, this is it. This is why you're here. This is why God gave you breath. And I am so honored that in 84 nations, people feel the same way. So I'm shocked still.
So take me back to Joe. Joe's
Yes.
getting emotional at
Yes.
the time. And so what happened from there?
Okay. Well, at that point, there wasn't any, he didn't have the full understanding of what I had been working on.
Because Joe is a master marketer, right? I mean,
yes, and many other things, but
Yes.
yeah, he is. He is, and we'll get to that if we have time. You'll giggle. It's funny, but you know, he said, "Listen, do you write as good as you talk?" And I said, "Well, no one ever asked me that, but I would assume I write pretty well." And he goes, "Well, why don't you start writing for my magazine? I have this magazine that's called Home Cures That Work." So I started writing every month for Home Cures That Work, and it kind of blew up a little bit. He goes, people love the way you talk. They love the honesty. And so I wrote for him for a while. I'll tell you the whole story real quick because it won't take that long. We just became really close friends and started doing stuff together. He started taking me and all these guys like the Mavericks, you know, these guys that have like gazillions of dollars and like ClickBank guys and all these famous guys. And here's this musician guy, and they loved having me around. So it's like, okay, I was kind of like a party favorite. And so we did this for, you know, a year and a half, just goofed around, spent time together, which was really the way to do it. Like, because I'm relational, it's like we built a heck of a friendship. Our families, children, kids love me. We love them. My wife and I love this family. And so Joe says, hey, I want to take you to this Maverick meeting in New Orleans. So I thought, okay. So my flight was supposed to get in at 12:45. It didn't get in until like 8:45 that night. There was like 4 mechanicals and all kinds of issues, and I was like done. When I got there, I just wanted to get into my hotel and go to bed. It was a frustrating day, and so I called Joe and found out it's the first night of Mardi Gras, so there's no taxis either. So I'm stuck at the airport, and I called Joe and I said, I am so sorry I missed dinner and everything and all your pals. I said, but here's what's happening. He goes, well, I'm in a taxi right now. I'll come get you. So he comes and gets me. And when he opened the door and we looked at each other, we started laughing so hard. We laughed for like 30 minutes. He goes, get in the cab. So we got back. We still had time to meet for a late dinner with another group of entrepreneur people. But anyway, so the next morning, this is where it got fun. We get up early, get dressed. We're going to go down and go to the Maverick meeting. And Joe looks at me and goes, do you want to go to that meeting? And I said, what? Do you feel like it? And I said, Joe, you invited me to go to this meeting from Florida, and it was like, you know, hell day yesterday, and you're asking me now if I want to go to this thing? He goes, why don't we just hang out all day? Why don't we just go downtown in New Orleans? So I thought, I'd rather do that too. So we did. We just went and did the tourist thing, you know, went down and had, you know, oysters at Felix's and did all this stuff. And I don't know, probably around 3 or 4, he said, hey, let's go to the Roosevelt Hotel. And we just sat there and talked about everything. And he made this statement I'll never forget. He looked me in the eye and he goes, so when are you going to birth this baby you're carrying around? And I said, what do you mean by that? And he goes, you know what I mean about that. Wholetones and this whole frequency thing. He goes, it could change the world, you know. I said, I'll get around to it someday. And he goes, nope, today's that day. And he got a napkin from the bar and wrote out, you know, his idea of what an agreement could look like between the two of us. And that was how we birthed Wholetones that day.
Wow.
As a business.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So then the production of it, after that became the production.
Yeah.
So how did that work?
Actually, well, you know, I mean, obviously you're great at what you do. I'm enjoying it. So you're great at what you do. And I'm really, really good at what I do until Wholetones. So all these years, you know, you get a Grammy. You don't get a Grammy because you're no good. You get a Grammy because you work hard and other people thought it was worth it. And so as a producer, engineer, musician, composer, you know, I can score an orchestra, I can do a soundtrack, or I can do a 3-piece jazz ensemble. It doesn't really matter. I was pretty good at it. So when it came to Wholetones, though, there wasn't any, you know, I think this is really going to help somebody listening. I feel it. I had a way that I did things. I had a system, and my system worked really well for me until I got about 10 miles from the studio. My wife was driving, had all my gear in the back of the truck, and we're getting to the studio, and all of a sudden I break down. I mean, just emotional. She goes, "What's wrong?" I said, "I don't have any music. I don't have any lead sheets. I don't have a clue what I'm doing. And this guy's in that building waiting for direction, and I don't know what I'm doing." She goes, "But you know that the theory and the tones in your head are real." I said, "Yeah." And she goes, "That's all you're going to need." So I walk in the studio, and here's these monster musicians, you know, their little egg timers. As soon as, you know, we start, you know, and I just told them right away, I said, "You're all getting paid right now. You don't need your egg timer. You know, it starts now." I said, "But I don't know what I'm doing." And I broke down. I just started crying, and I got down, I sat down on the floor, and I said, "I'm going to put the headphones on, and I'm going to listen to the tones I created. And there's music in there. It's like a well, and I'm going to go in and get the music. And when I hear it, I'm going to start shouting. I'm going to shout parts out to you right away. And I want you to get on your instrument. And I want you to start playing along with what I'm doing when I'm singing to you. And I want you to remember it. And then when I tell you the red light's going to come on, and we're going to record this thing." So here's what makes it even more exciting for your listeners. This particular studio was called Noise Vault Studios. It had no windows and only isolation booths, meaning that I'm in a room, drummers in a room, keyboard players in a room, bass players in a room.
Everyone's separate.
Everybody's separate without line of sight. Can't see them at all. So, and I don't have a watch on either. So I can't hear them. All I can do, the only way I can hear their music is back through the cans in there. But since I'm mic'd up, you know, I obviously can't speak into my microphone, or it's going to print along with the guitar. So it's kind of a live without a net experience. And so I wasn't thinking about any of that. I was thinking about, I've heard what we're going to do. And the first one that went down was 396. And so I just said, "Listen, I'm just going to start playing." I just played one chord, and then for 22 minutes and 22 seconds on the clock tick, we went into something that, all I know is that when we were done, I see a very stoic, very unemotional engineer jumping up and down in the mixing booth, going out of his mind. And he goes, "You guys need to come in here right now." So he went in there, and he goes, "You know, that was exactly 22 minutes and 22 seconds. And he goes, "I got to play you some of this." And I listened back to it, and it sounded like symphonic music. Sounded like something I would normally compose, but much, much better. But no, this was spontaneous. I mean, without seeing each other or having any type of signals. Or, I mean, the drummer knew when to come in, when to come out, when to stop dead, when to start back up, and everybody followed everything. And I thought, if we can do that 6 more times, this is going to be life-changing. And that's how it went down. The whole thing mixed and out the door was 7 days.
Wow.
And it was all one take, spontaneous music with nobody being able to see each other and no music in front of anybody. It was just, and it's always been that way. These guys, that's why I only play with the guys I play with. They're so intuitive, and they know me so well. And they're such wonderful men of God. They feel things, and they know what's going on. And I don't have to tell them much. You know, I usually have an explanation of what's in my heart before, and then we go in there and we just start playing.
So Michael, now you have it, and now you want to bring it to the world, right? So how do you get it out to the masses? Well,
so here's the funny thing is that, you know, again, PR and marketing and all that, like, that's not my strong side. My strong side is I'm a pure creative. I'm like an 80-20, like 20 admin and 80%, you know, dreaming and creating. So, you know, Joe's group, I really didn't know a whole lot about what Joe did. I'd never heard of him before. I just became his buddy, you know, and then I realized, yeah, this is pretty cool stuff. Well, I went to California and San Diego at this TNC thing that we're going to, you know, next week. And people started saying, "So we hear you're working with Joe. Boy, how did that happen? He's amazing." And everybody said wonderful things about Joe. I mean, everybody. And so, you know, when we were releasing it, it got a little heated at some points because I have expectations, and it looked like it was going to miss the original Black Friday. And I'm a pretty, as you can tell, I'm a pretty laid back guy, but I barked out some stuff over the phone, and I said, "Listen, if you guys have this thing up and running by Black Friday. We got big problems. The next thing I looked on Slack and I see Joe going, all hands on deck, all hands on deck. And they, this team of guys, there's not another group of people on the chemistry, on the Barton Publishing team. I love every one of them. We're all friends, and they rose to the occasion and they blew that thing out on Black Friday, and the rest is history. And it's, so yeah, I mean, it's like, it's the old adage in business, I makey, he selly. That's about as difficult as it is.
Michael, thank you for sharing the stories. I appreciate it. I have two last questions, but before I ask them, let's point people to some of the sites that they should check out. So we have Wholetones.com, WHOLE tones.com. Where else should we point people towards to check out the work?
Sure. Wholetonesmusic.com, spelled the same way, WHOLETONESMUSIC.com.
Mm-hmm.
And for the newest project, which is called Life, Love, and Lullabies, which hopefully you and I will get to talk again. That's WholetonesSleep.com. And that'll be a fun, maybe our next time we can talk about that, because you'll be laughing the whole time how that came about. But that's the new one that just came out. Wholetones, Life, Love, and Lullabies.
I was talking a little bit with Marty about this, and he said people were demanding this type of thing. And that's...
Well, here's the funny thing. It's like, usually, I'm like you, like, because people demand stuff doesn't really have any bearing on me, but the fact that no, it doesn't.
No, I know. That's what's funny.
It's just so funny. It's like, I demand that you do this. Well, I demand that I do what I'm supposed to do. But the thing was that I had already in my heart thought, I didn't create Wholetones, the original one, as a sleep project. I recorded it as an utterance of what was supposed to be released. So, people would say, 396 puts me to sleep, and it's awesome. But then if I listen through all night long, the 852 comes in with all the drums and electric guitar, and wakes me up. I said, well, for starters, just loop 396, put that on an infinite loop, and and that works.
Your problem solved.
Yeah, to some degree.
Yeah.
But when I had the feeling of this lullaby thing, it was like, this is lullabies, but this isn't just for infants. This is from like 9 months to 99 years. It's, this is going to be something special. And I felt like I wasn't supposed to have any drums or percussion or any, even though, of course, because the musicians have such great meter, you could still use a metronome if you wanted. But I didn't feel like there needed to be any dynamics or transient points in the music or anything that was percussive that, so people could rest. I had no idea what I had created. Wasn't even in. This thing is so powerful. I'll just tell you one quick story. We're in the recording studio, and I'm mixing down with Brad Knight, the guy that I work with, producer, engineer, monster guy, in the new place in Dallas called The Bakery, and where we did the last two. And we're pounding coffees, pounding them. I mean, I drink one cup. I'm on my fourth cup, and then we went out to get iced coffee because we can't stay awake. And we're like, we still got 4 more hours of mixing and going. I'm looking at him, and he's like, and I'm nodding out. And finally, I looked at him, and I just lost it. I said, "You goober, we're the reason we're falling asleep because we're mixing lullabies. This stuff actually works." It was putting us to sleep.
That's funny. Yeah. That's great. So 2 last questions, Michael. One is, I want to hear about a low point and then a proud moment. And I don't know if this was a low point, but I was reading that you had a really difficult old job at Rent-A-Center.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Man, you really did. You did some research. Yeah. So you mean as far as in my life, like low points and high points? Well, I would say that, again, it's so funny, isn't it, how you can always find something good later on. It's usually 2020, but retroactive. The Rent-A-Center was definitely a low point because it was like, that whole time of like you feeling like an invisible man. You know that you have skill, you're talented, but you can't get arrested in the music industry at the moment, and you're cleaning out cruddy, moldy refrigerators. And the worst part of all was when they moved me into the repo division, and I'm like taking kids' TVs on Saturday during cartoons, and I was so bad at it that usually I'd tell the dad, I'd say, I'll be back at 2 when the cartoon's over. I can't do it. I just can't do it, you know. So yeah, I think that was a low point.
You'd have to go in and repossess items because someone couldn't pay the bill.
Because they wouldn't pay the bill. And half the time I wish I had the money so I could buy it for them. And so it was a very tough job. It was not in my wheelhouse at all. And then a high point would absolutely be Wholetones for a myriad of reasons. I mean, first of all, because like the main thing I missed was, as hard as I tried all my life and with as much research and schooling I had as a musician, the only time in my whole life where I didn't know what I was doing and I was able just to get out of God's way and just let this intention and this intuition take over and do what I felt like was supposed to happen is the only time it ever really, really blew up. I just found that fascinating that it took me 54 years of life to realize some of the elemental secrets of life is to get out of the way and stop thinking that you know how everything. I did the same thing all the time, and I had a moderate level of success. And in the case of Rent,
to do, though.
It's super hard.
Yeah.
But if you can do it, I mean, what do you got to lose? That's the point. And then, you know, of course, you know, my family changed. You know, Joe Barton and all the guys came into my life. So this last few years has definitely been, it's been wonderful.
Yeah. Michael, I want to be the first one to thank you so much. I am looking forward to hanging out in person, hopefully, in San Diego. And everyone should check out Wholetones.com, Wholetonesmusic.com. Thank you so much.
Oh, bro. Thank you, man. Let's do this again.
Yes.
What I got, you can't buy. It resides between my eyes. Walked through the fire, came out better on the other